Hello, everybody. I'm sorry I'm late. The usual technical difficulties. That's just how we roll this here. It's just like the usual stuff, you know? Anyways, hello, Twisted. Hello, Jake. Lagite. What's up, Brett? Hello, Tone. Chris Bryant, PhD, your favorite utilitarian, is joining us as well. Salad Fogel, what's up? And who else is here? And Martin Kevin has joined us as well. Well, right. What are we doing today? So I have this friend called Patrick, Foolproof Mastery, who keeps sending me very interesting stuff. And he sent me this white paper written by Peter. That's claiming the following. So it says cage-free housing systems failed to reduce overall hen suffering, right? It's an interesting claim for me because there are efforts that are going into the reduction of suffering of animals. And the ongoing debate is, right, whether that actually, it's obvious, let's put it on the table. Even as abolitionists, we can say it's obvious that if animals suffer less, that's a good thing, right? Like if somebody's killed, is like, it's not worse than somebody's being tortured and then killed, right? We can recognize that if we put ourselves in the shoes of the animals, that if the only choice we had was to be tortured and then killed, or just killed, I personally would prefer to just get killed, right? If that's the dichotomy that exists in front of us. And so, but also the ongoing debate about this is whether welfare measures even work to do what welfare is supposed to be doing, which is reducing the suffering of animals, right? This paper seems to claim otherwise, but I'm sure there is a lot of nuance. I'm sure there are a lot of claims, a lot of substantiations of those claims. It's 32 pages. We're probably not going to finish today, but we're going to start. I'm going to do our favorite thing lately, and that's read this paper, and we'll see where we can get, right? Let me just reposition stuff slightly. There you go. It's all white now, and that's just perfect. Okay. So, Peter, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, all right? There's a cute little baby and a cute little mother right there. And there are like legs of another baby right there. Where do people even get those pictures these days is my question, right? Like, do they go to some homesteader who like doesn't buy baby chicks at the Tractor Supply, but they like, you know, let the hens brood or something, right? Now I remember this similar situation from my childhood, because exactly one time that I remember that my parents didn't buy chickens from somewhere, right? They just like allowed this one chicken to sit on the eggs, allowed her to brood. And the chicken was a fantastic mother. She really gave me the side eye every time I took one of her chicks. The chicks were cute as fuck. I remember myself like lying in the sun and, you know, putting my hand on the chick's head, and the chick would fall asleep just from the heat of my hand. But outside of that, like very small amount of anecdotes slash homesteads slash backyard chickens that actually do this once in a while. Where does this actually exist? Because definitely it doesn't exist in the farms, right? Where every farm has 25,000 to 30,000 animals, right? So, I don't know. What's up, Marissa? It's just like a little side eye. I'm not sure where they're getting those pictures from. And it's just like a stock photo. So, yeah, it's probably some kind of a homestead or something. Okay, executive summary. The time has come to acknowledge that the well-intentioned move to compel the egg industry to switch from traditional battery cages to alternative cage-free housing systems has failed to achieve more than minimal improvements in hen welfare, and in some cases can create distinct or worse welfare problems than the cage system they replaced. This transition and the marketing of cage-free options have left consumers with a false impression of happy hens who can perform a full range of natural behaviors. Despite marketing claims, stocking density, poor building design, and flock size in industrial cage-free systems limit high-quality expression of full range of natural behaviors, such as the abilities to stretch and preen wings, roost, scratch, peck, forage, dust bathe, socialize, and more. Cage-free certifications and labels mislead consumers into believing that cage-free hens behave like hens in their natural environments. They indeed do this, right? So like the cage-free thing is whitewashing what is actually happening. There's no doubt about that. If you ask a consumer who never seen where the eggs come from, right? Who's never seen anything industrial, they're gonna say, wait, yeah, cage-free. They're just like allowed to roam around, right? Like on the grass. That's how they imagine it. We don't even know if they imagine it based on anything that the industry even presents, because it could be they're just like making it up, right? Based on this like idyllic picture that they imagine. So I don't know. Where am I? Cage-free. Sorry, I don't know where I stopped. The industry encourages and profits from this fiction, which is perpetuated through deceptive humane labeling, promoted in studies that respond to industry concerns, to increase productivity and profit, and legitimized by animal welfare organizations that secure corporate cage-free commitments. So, Chris, if you're still listening, this is attacking you directly, you and people like FarmKind, right? So, cage-free housing cannot achieve good animal welfare because it exists within a large industrial system that exploits hens and causes them great suffering at every stage of their lives. It simply removes battery cages but transforms the same factory farm shed into one large cage. Cage-free environments involve most of the same abuses found in conventional housing, such as permanently damaging the sensitive tips of hens' beaks by searing or burning them off with a blade of infrared red light, and inducing molting to maximize a hen's egg production. So inducing molting, probably do it in several ways. One of them is darkness. Another one is, I think, starvation, but I'm not sure. I haven't found like a paper on it. Although I remember reading one, right, about the starvation thing. I'll be interested to hear the evidence that they improve profitability. Seems very unlikely. What do you mean? Cage-free eggs cost more money, while Peter claiming they haven't changed much at all. Like, what have they invested into this, right? Like, They maybe expanded the shed this once. But the eggs are sold for substantially more money. Anyways. But yeah, I would prefer, this is like an executive summary. So obviously, if they're providing evidence, it's going to be later on. So yeah, I'm at the edge of my seat, for sure. It similarly depends on the cruelties of industrial hatchery and genetic selection to maximize production and exploit hens' bodies and their biological limits and beyond. There can be a lot of bad stuff and still be better than the alternative. So I'm interested to see the comparison. Yeah, me too. That's why we're doing this. In artificially lit and severely crowded non-cage housing, where space allowances can prevent the average hen from turning around freely and spreading her wings, or traveling to another section of the barn without bumping into or infringing on the space of another hen. Pecking is the one natural behavior that remains after the pecking order has fallen to pieces. Cage-free confinement also introduces... Just a side note, I don't remember that... sorry, I need to remove this. I don't remember there being like a pecking... I never noticed it, I suppose. I don't remember there being like a pecking order with chickens that I grew up with. I think everybody were eating at the same time, except for the rooster who would eat last. I don't know. We didn't have at any given time more than 12 hens, though, so I'm not sure. Less typing, more lifting. Yeah, Chris. Well, you know, you have to take the time in between tone. Because they cost more to produce. I don't know, like, it depends. It depends, I think, I guess, on what is meant by that, right? Because I've sure as fuck seen pictures where they literally just, like, removed the cages and just, like, they even still grow, like, they even still like house them in levels, many levels, right? So they like removed cages but kept the levels, and chickens are just like piled on one on another. So I think basically one could be defined as cage-free without doing almost fucking anything. Just basically just like throwing out the cages or selling them probably, and just like not changing anything else. And that would be like cage free, right? And there would be like a door and like just like maybe add like some kind of a fence around that door so that they don't run out, and there they have like now access to the outside world somehow. I don't know, it just doesn't sound like something that cost more to produce, quote unquote. Yeah. Lifts. Look, Max. All right, so cage-free confinement also introduces welfare problems that are worse than in cage systems, such as increased immunosuppression and chronic respiratory infections and skin lesions caused by ammonia-saturated air, wet, loose litter, and higher levels of pathogenic particulate matter. So I understand why, right? So I think I understand why, right? I'm like guesstimating here, like based on what I understand. So you have a cage is suspended above the platform, right? And so when chickens poop, the poop falls through the cage onto a platform. Whether that platform is cleaned or not, that's like irrelevant. Because now there are no cages, there is no suspension. They just fucking wallow in shit. And the one thing that chickens get sometimes on their legs, our chickens would, like when I was growing up, is like this collection of dung on the feet, and then they would like really have a hard time walking, because imagine now it's like raised and there's like it's just like really bothersome on the legs. Now we had only 12 hens or so, and so I don't know, once a year or so we'll just like pick each chicken up, put them in a little bit of water, and then clean off their legs. But imagine you have 10,000 in one shed. You're not going to do that. And so for 2 years, they're going to be walking around on these like clumps of shit on their legs, right? And I suppose like if they sit in that as well, right, they get like skin infections and stuff like that. Yeah. And a bunch of other stuff that I have no idea about. So this dust is disturbed by mass movement. So what are we talking about? Caused by ammonia saturated air, wet loose litter, and higher levels of pathogenic particulate matter. So I don't know what that would come from, so I can't wait to read what they're gonna say. This dust is disturbed by mass movement, dust bathing, and pecking on open flooring, increasing the risk of barn fires, and in addition to widespread contagion and consequently the mass killing of infected flocks due to heat stroke and suffocation from the standard industry practices of ventilation shutdown. Right. Uncaged hens are vulnerable to higher rates of injurious, severe, and cannibalistic feathers, toe, and cloacal pecking, leading to chronic pain, infection, loss of the ability to regulate body heat, cannibalism, and even death. Now, just to make sure we add some nuance to it, if indeed all people did, all farmers did, was remove the cages and kept the same number of hens in there, then yes, this is what it will result in, right? Because the welfare cost them nothing. They've changed nothing except for removing the barriers between the animals and between the animals and their shit, right? If indeed, I don't know, actual more place to roam is given to them, then this could still be true, but to a smaller degree. Because my understanding is that will still be like, my understanding is nobody's raising animals the way these animals the way homesteaders do, for instance, right? Which has its own welfare issues. I can assure you, I've seen those issues, I've documented those issues. But the way a person who goes and buys cage-free eggs imagines these hens to live, that's kind of how they live on homesteads, right? Generally speaking, right? They're either in like a chicken run or like actually fully just like walking around or whatever, but usually in a chicken run because all predators want to eat chickens. And so they have like generally like it's a small number of animals in a larger space than usually afforded in the egg industry, right? For instance. But if actually, like, if it's like a fantasy, right? Literally, no caged egg-laying industry changed itself into becoming the homestead type scenario. Literally, none of them done this. The best, I think, who have done like the best thing is putting them not in layered barn, like literally just removing cages and just keeping the rest the same, but like taking a broiler chicken barn and just like occupying it with egg-laying hens, which is still very tight, right? Like quite, so that would cost them more to produce because now they don't layer them, right? So they need more land, they need like maybe 1 or 2 more workers to collect the eggs that are going to be like truly spread out. But those issues could still arise, right? The issues that we're talking about here. Because literally no farm is going to have 1 or 2 people taking care of a dozen hens. No, it's going to be 1 or 2 people taking care of 10,000 hens, right? And so it's a physical impossibility for them to create the actual changes that even we as vegans imagine it could create, in my opinion. But we'll see. Like, I'm just speculating based on experience. What's up, Joe? In flocks numbering in the tens of thousands, each hen is provided with only between 1 and 1.5 square feet of floor space. This confinement combined with large flock sizes breeds aggression and resource competition. Hence, natural behavioral synchronization leads to piling and suffocation. Debilitating keel bone fractures and breaks often occur when hens fall or are pushed or jostled by other hens from perches and nest boxes. Competition for nest, I think this was supposed to be nest boxes, causes piling and even death from suffocation due to smothering. Holy shit. That's hell of a claims, right? Sorry, I'm not sure what you're trying to write here. Let me try and read this. So where are these chickens going to live? They are not wild. They exist because of us. We can eat them. They are delicious. Bro, you wrote with your ass here. And I'm a fucking genius from understanding what you wrote. For understanding what you wrote. Well, here's the thing, right? You said it. They exist because of us. So we can just like stop breeding them, stop producing them. And presto, they don't have to go into the wild. They can just like not exist. And there is plenty of delicious food that you can still eat that didn't come from a corpse of a sentient animal, right? And so if you can do something kind for the animal, like for instance, preventing them from existing in torturous environments and eventually killed through suffocation in case of egg-laying hens, right? Then surely as the superior species on this earth, we should choose kindness over, I don't even know what, because I eat delicious food all the time. It just doesn't come from the corpse of a sentient animal, right? So you give up nothing. You learn how to change your habits slightly, which is an important lesson in life. And you leave the animals the fuck alone until eventually they stop being bred, yeah? So I hope that answers your question. Okay. As a result of resource competition, hens in cage-free systems lay a portion of their roughly 300 eggs per year on the floor. These hens will never brood or experience motherhood. When a new generation of hens is hatched, it mechanized in mechanized incubators, they are born without the presence of their mothers, which deprives the chicks of learning vocalizations that would help them manage fear and stress responses throughout their lives. I'm actually going to respond to something that a farmer put on their channel, on their Instagram page, that addresses this point exactly. It's gonna be out this week, so look out for that. These motherless chicks are once again traumatized by being separated from the chicks they imprinted on at a hatchery when they are roughly loaded and transported to egg factories. This dystopian cycle of chronic stress, frustration, pain, suffering, aggression, and death by cannibalism, disease, and slaughter repeats with each generation of chicks born into the egg industry, whether destined for a battery cage or a cage-free facility. Yeah. So, confining hens to battery cages was always ethically untenable, but so was the alternative presented by cage-free campaigns. Neither options should be supported or promoted. Instead, anyone who believes hen suffering is unacceptable should commit to supporting efforts to eliminate their exploitation for eggs in the first place. I'm not gonna lie, guys, I think the egg industry is going to be one of the last ones to go, just because the egg propaganda is, I think, stronger than anything, even stronger than red meat. So I think chickens are going to be the last ones that we abolish, but I'm just guessing here, and I hope I'm wrong. I don't know. Does it matter which? I don't know. Yes, it doesn't matter because they are like the most individuals, I suppose, trapped in those industries. So yeah, I guess I do care. Unfortunately, I agree, says Twister. Yeah. In 30 minutes. Sure, if I'm still around, Chris. If not, you can join me next time. But definitely, if I'm still around, come join. Let me know, like, in the chat so I can see it. Okay. All right. So that was just, I waffled a lot about it, but that was just the executive summary. And the paper is still quite long. Right. So, introduction. In the 1830s, selectively bred hens laid between 50 and 175 eggs each year. From the 1860s to the 1890s, especially in the US, a new group of commercial breeders began selecting for traits such as high productivity and rapid growth. It was during this period that the concept of the laying hen emerged. This construction reduced the chicken to her reproductive traits and eventually restricted her behavior, weakened her musculoskeletal system, prevented hens from experiencing positive affective states, and introduced chronic stress. And I don't know if we should go through references or not, but the claims are supported, so that's kind of the point here, right? So, Chris, I don't know. I don't know if it's viable to go through each citation, right? Because citations, I've seen it's like 4 pages of citations. But they are, the claims are supported, is the point. Sorry, one sec. Okay. Over the past century, hen's average egg production doubled from 150 eggs per hen in the 1930s to 301 in 2024. The ancestors, the red jungle fowl, laid only about 10 to 15 eggs per year. Today's genetically selected hens reach sexual maturity earlier and can produce over 350 eggs annually. Jesus, man. In 2024, US table egg production totaled 93.1 billion. Per capita egg consumption has increased 15% over the past 20 years, from 255 in 2004 to 273 in 2024, which amazes me, frankly, because I used to eat 2 eggs every single day. Well into my 30s, right? So that would be 600, 700 eggs per year. Damn. How am I still fucking alive? Jesus Christ. Nah, sack the citation. Well, you know. Unless something seems else. Yeah, okay. Based on the 2022 Census of Agriculture data published by the US Department of Agriculture's National Agricultural Statistics Service and the US Environmental Protection Agency, definitions of concentrated animal feeding operations, an estimated 98% of egg-laying hens in the US live in factory farms. Of the 240,530 egg factories in the US, Jesus fucking Christ, man, included in the 22 census, 347 operations housed 75,000 or more hens, which accounted for more than 75% of the total hen population. Jesus. Another 23% are housed in operations with up to 75,000 hens. And do you think those places have enough workers to take care of all of those animals? Probably fucking not. Probably because we're probably going to see the drop rate, the death rate of those places, which is probably, yes, a direct result of all of the issues that they claimed already, but also I'm convinced it's just like also just pure neglect, because there is no way that the number of workers there are on egg farms could take care of animals. Anybody who has a pet knows that taking care of a pet is a job, right? And now imagine you have 75,000 of them, and you're just like 4 or 5 people trying to take care of those animals. That's going to be neglect automatically, right? So the United Egg Producers certified cage-free requirements for indoor floor space are 1 hen per 1 square foot, 144 square inches. 1 square foot is 30 by 30 centimeters in it. Let me just 2 square centimeters. 1 square foot is 929 square centimeters. That makes no sense. That's a lot. That's like a meter. No, that's like 10 meters. No, surely. What does a square foot look like? I'm now confused. I thought it was... So a foot is 30 centimeters, plus or minus, like 33 centimeters. And so when they're saying a square foot, they don't actually mean... well, the hen is not given 10 meters, surely, which is what this implies. I'm a dumbass. I'm probably a dumbass. Probably not understanding. So I'm imagining something like this, right? Like the width of my shoulders is about 30 centimeters. No, it's a bit more. But that math also fucked with me. Okay. Well, if I now feel better. Thank you, Chris. If a PhD can make this mistake. So I'm not sure. 144 square meters. I think they're making a mistake here by calling it a square foot. I think something fucky is going on here. An indoor housing system that provides hens with access to vertical space. In single level all litter floor systems, the density is 1 hen per 1.5 square feet of usable floor space. You gotta think 100 centimeters square would be 100 centimeters times 1 centimeter. I'm not sure what that means. No, 100 centimeters square, yeah, would be 100 centimeters by times 1 centimeter. I understand what you're saying. So 100 centimeters square would be something like 20 centimeters by 5 centimeters. So 1,000 centimeters would be basically like So 30, so yeah. This is 30 centimeters, as I said. It's likely slightly smaller than my my shoulders. That's 33 centimeters would be 1 foot. And then 1 foot by 1 foot is how I imagine a square to be, right? Something like that. So it's 33 times 33. That would be 926 centimeters or whatever. But what it looks like, it sounds like a lot, but it looks like is a tiny space. There's just like 900 centimeters in that space. Am I getting it now? Am I getting it now? I think I am. Bro, hated math. Math is terrible. That is correct. I appreciate it. The struggle is real. I can decipher a lot of things, but math is not one of them. I do remember this, but it's just like sounds like a lot. You know what I mean? When you say like 1 square foot. I mean, the opposite. When you say 1 square foot, it sounds fine. When you say 126 square centimeters, that's why they lose me. But you gotta imagine all those centimeters are packed into this shit of, right, like this 2-dimensional space. And if you count on this side, it's 33 centimeters. And if you count on this side, it's 33 centimeters as well, right? Yeah. Okay. As of August 1st, 2025, the total number, yeah, I know that's what it is. I know 30 by 30 is 900. It just sounds like a lot of space, but it's not. I'm just confused. That's all. I know the times table, that I know. Yeah. So the total number of layers in the US was 362 million. Jesus Christ, man. Of which 297 million produced table or market type eggs. What does that mean? Table or market type eggs. So do they mean just commercial in this case? As of September 1st, 2025, the estimated US non-organic commercial cage-free table egg flock was 116.6 million, 38.7% of the current US table egg flock. The ratio of cage to cage-free layers is 55 to 45. So caged to cage-free, so 55% are still caged and 45% are not. Am I understanding correctly? Okay. You're getting it now? Yeah. Math. hard. 10 US states have laws requiring that cage-free systems replace traditional cages or prohibiting the sale of eggs from caged hens, effectively creating a cage-free market in those states. Yet these are not the states where most of the hens are raised on factory farms. The USDA Agricultural Marketing Service estimates that 76% of US hens need to be in cage-free production by 2026 to meet projected consumer demand. Bare wire cages or battery cages offered industry benefits such as lower food conversion ratios. Yeah, the hens are not moving as much, right? So they need a bit more food. Reduced disease risk without litter, so because the shit falls through the cage, and better egg quality. I'm not sure about that. Why would it be better egg quality? Maybe because they because of the feed conversion, as a result of the feed conversion? I'm not sure. Although caging was once thought to be unnatural, irrational, or doomed to fail, the testing of prolonged caging of hens in smaller groups to improve hen health, survivability, and egg production was justified under the guise of protection against weather predators and disease. Protection, right? I think table eggs means excluding breeding eggs. Oh, gotcha. Thank you. Appreciate that. However, the significant welfare issues of cages gained public attention after Ruth Harrison's 1964 book, Animal Machines, exposed the problems in intensive factory farm systems. Over the following 40 years, research into cage welfare increased, public awareness grew, and governments began banning battery cages, starting with Switzerland in 1992, well ahead of the European Union. 1999 phase out, which was completed in 2012. So I was saying in European Union, all eggs are cage free. Interesting. That I didn't know. We do sometimes concentrate way too much on the production in the US. Scientific research of hen social stress and welfare increased after the publications of Harrison's book, and then the British government 1965 Bramble report, founded in 1967, Compassion in World Farming. Jesus, the names on those things. Chris, the names on the welfare organizations. It's just like fucking Christ. It's like literal Christ, right? Like it's the name, oh my God, we're saving the world. Lobbied against industrial farming and battery cages, but was largely ignored. I believe they failed to meet that 100% EU target. Oh, interesting. Despite clear evidence from animal welfare scientists of the many shortcomings, including both obvious and subtle effects on hen well-being, such as disruption in social behavior and stocking densities, hen stress behaviors, injuries from living environment, designs, and social interactions, and skeletal weakness, factory farms became the main method for raising animals for profit. Cage-free, multi-tiered aviary systems, which is the thing that I was still mentioning, right? You barely have to change anything. You just take out the cages and keep the layers, right? Maybe unite the layers a little bit better so that they don't move through layers, the hens, because surely most of them would try to pile on the top layers. Chickens do like being on top somewhere. They don't like walking around necessarily, if I remember correctly. Right. Aviary-style barns have rows of equipment running the length of the facility, containing nest boxes, feeders, waterers, open wire floors, and perches. There is typically a manure belt running between each layer of the equipment and a scratch area between rows. The layout and design can vary greatly. Some systems have doors on the rows of the equipment that can be closed to contain the birds, whereas others do not restrict them. Like conventional cage systems, most non-cage systems feature tiered structures to create vertical space within indoor barn houses instead of additional flooring space. Eggs packed in USDA grade marked consumer packages labeled as cage-free are laid by hens who are able to roam vertically and horizontally in indoor houses and have access to fresh food and water. That's it, Chris. That's the definition of cage-free. Damn. I can think of a nightmare scenario that has those criteria. And indeed, we've all seen those nightmare scenarios, haven't we? Yeah. In addition, they must allow hens to exhibit natural behavior and include enrichments such as scratch areas, perches, and nests. Hens must, they must exhibit natural behaviors and include enrichment. So I don't know what this means. How would you measure this? Right? How would you walk into a barn and say, yeah, they can exhibit their natural behaviors? What does that even mean? And include enrichments such as scratch areas, perches, and nests. Well, you know, cheap as fuck to put up, frankly. Hens must have access to litter, protection from predators, and be able to move in a barn in a manner that promotes bird welfare. It's just like so many goes, oh, they must move in a manner that promotes bird welfare. The fuck does that mean? What does that mean? Okay. Cage-free housing systems are highly variable due to different management practices, labeling schemes, and welfare certifications, which can lead to discrepancies in how birds are managed across these systems. Yeah. Various selection pressures have molded current domesticated hen strains, including greater egg production, egg quality, feed efficiency, longevity, and behavior. So that's the introduction. Jesus, bruh, that's a lot of information. This paper is packed. Give me 1 sec. I have to ask something. Somebody. I'll be right back. Right. Just want to see when I'm getting off the stream. Okay. So the problem of the cage-free housing systems. The increased complexity of managing cage-free systems has led to significant challenges in achieving or surpassing cage welfare standards. Welfare in cage-free systems varies considerably and depends on the steep learning curve in management, genetic selection, welfare research, and the design and maintenance of a wide variety of housing environments. Yeah. No single factory farm housing system is ideal from the perspective of a hen's welfare. Although environmental complexity increases hens' behavioral repertoire, it also increases the risk of infectious disease outbreaks, right? Non-cage confinement can create opportunities for the stressed hens to express behaviors that are harmful to their well-being. Although cage-free systems have been praised by some animal welfare organizations as a significant improvement in hen welfare and a preferable alternative to battery cages, cage-free systems shift rather than eliminate welfare burdens, improving some welfare outcomes while worsening others. I've been saying this about small farms and homesteads for a while, though some torture is eliminated in smaller farms, roam-free type situation, homestead environment and such. Others increase. Other welfare concerns increase. Animals in small, like in like a house, like backyard chicken type situation, are more likely to get mauled alive by the surrounding animals, right? For instance, second of all of those animals are slaughtered in the end. And I would claim that it's likely that the house slaughter, the homestead slaughter, causes more suffering than the mechanized slaughter. Maybe. Right. They are also much more likely just to fucking drop dead and die in the homestead situation because they are likely not to be vaccinated, for instance. So a bunch of welfare concerns arise with higher welfare area, right? Higher welfare conditions. Hens in cage-free systems are comparatively more immunocompromised because they breathe in high levels of pathogenic dust, ammonia, and particulate matter. The accumulation of dust and feathers in electrical systems contributes to a high incidence of barn fires. Cage-free hens have higher rates of injury, particularly keel bone fractures are injurious and injurious pecking. They are more likely to develop hypocalcemia, below normal levels of calcium in the blood, and high stocking densities lead to an increased risk of contracting bird flu, which invariably leads to cruel mass slaughter methods. So the improvement in welfare going from caged to cage-free seems to bring new issues into the fold, while sometimes not eliminating the old ones, the old issues. So they still get a bunch of diseases that they get in cages, but they also have increased risk of other diseases as well, it seems. Yeah, there is something that I wanted to say, but I bet they are going to address it at some point. They're going to talk about health, though. The shift to cage-free systems has created economic opportunities for the egg industry. Welfare studies that focus on floor laying and packing help egg producers address productivity and profit losses associated with the shift to cage-free systems. Cage-free labels allow the egg industry to charge a premium while signaling to consumers that these specialty eggs are laid by happy hens and therefore acceptable for kind people to buy. I remember myself saying one day, when I have enough money, I'm gonna start buying cage-free stuff. And my then friend, who was also a carnist back then, said, bro, I live next to a cage-free farm. They look like fucking shit. They suffer so much. They have the beaks cut off. And I remember that shocking me. And that was like good 10 years before I went vegan. When I say that I became vegan thanks to carnists, due to my conversations with carnists, I fucking mean it. Because those are the conversations that just like flooded me the second I became vegan. None of the conversations with vegans, unfortunately, which I also had, right? The industry clearly demonstrates this marketing approach in a recent comprehensive report on transitioning to cage-free systems, funded by UEP, the Food Industry Association, the Food Marketing Institute Foundation, and the United Egg Association. The report states that cage-free marketing offers an opportunity for an industry reset in how consumers and animal activist community perceive the industry. So it's whitewashing the cages as well, isn't it? So cage-free welfare assurances mask the failure of this approach to meaningfully reduce overall hen suffering. I guess they are kind of, Chris, they are kind of stating it. They have provided the evidence for it, though, if you're still listening. They have, like, provided, like, every time they said what the problem is, they have provided evidence. So I guess they're not stating it. I guess I'm mistaken. They just, like, wrote a thing and then now they repeat it as if it's true because they have provided evidence for it. Instead, cage-free functions as an industry tool to stabilize and expand markets and support overall industry growth. Yeah, this is something we've also been talking about for a while, right? This doesn't have a citation, though, this specific claim. Maybe they will in later, right? This is, I think, a claim without a citation, so it could be something that's scrutinized. But I think, like, every person who ever talked to a carnist can attest. And every person who's been a carnist and remembers those conversations, I can attest to that as well. Yeah, no problem, Chris. To understand the cruelty of confinement in cage-free egg factories, it is essential to examine the nature of chickens, including their complex social structures, biological rhythms, preferences for behavioral symmetry, and intrinsic motivations, and then to compare all these aspects with findings from welfare studies. Scientific literature shows no evidence that the cognitive abilities and complex behaviors of highly selected breeds of chickens in industrial farming differ significantly from those of their wild ancestors. We must also recognize that the idea of the laying hen is an industry invention that masks breeding practices designed to maximize egg-laying rates across housing systems. Cage-free labels fail completely to address the cruelty of industrial hatcheries that kill male chicks and replace spent hens from cage and non-cage systems with chicks whose sensitive beak tips have been removed and who are deprived of critical social and emotional learning opportunities from their mothers and older chickens. I've been banging on about this as well for a while. I've been talking about this. I talked about this first, I think, in my de-animalization video, just like 2 years ago at this point. And there I made, in that video, I made the point, a speculative point, which I hold to be true, that one of the reasons that we think farmed animals are stupid is because we don't even allow them to learn from their elders. The second they're born, we isolate them, which must impede their mental and mental growth, as it does to children who are isolated without much experience with grown-ups. They're just like gonna be intellectually stunted because the way children learn is from the old people talking to them, right? Basically. And when you're growing up in isolation with only your peers, people who know about as much as you do, you're just gonna be intellectually stunted. So why wouldn't that be true for animals as well? Whom, like, think of an industry that doesn't do this. Maybe like the beef industry allows calves to be with mothers for a little bit, right? For like 3 months, I think, 3 to 6 months. But the rest of the industries, the children are isolated from the grown-ups immediately as they're born. In case of chickens, they never even know a grown-up animal, what they look like. They don't never even interact with that as children, right? It's just like, so why are we calling them stupid when we are the one making sure that they can't learn? Yeah. Analysis. Part 1. The effects of toxicity and pathogenic disease on the bodies and behavior of hens. A. Pecking, foraging, and dust bathing in pathogenic dust and wet litter. Cage-free housing systems are primarily indoor systems with limited or no outdoor access. Certified cage-free guidelines from the UEP address only indoor housing components. The large amount of feed, litter, and excrement combined with dust bathing and foraging behavior and increased bird movement in alternative systems leads to higher concentration of bacteria and fungi in the air and increased levels of dust. I was going to say this, right? How do they get like more dust, pick up more dust? Well, because now they can like move around in the dust, right? In the feather shed, in the dried up shit, in the wet shit. The cages were removed, but now you have 10,000 individuals in one shed able to move around, kinda. So they're trying to move around, bringing up the dust up, right? Because chickens flap, they do, right? And then a cloud of shit and a dust and feather dust and skin dust and mites and whatever the hell else. Bro, just thinking about it, I'm allergic to dust mites, and I'm not gonna lie, guys, I'm lately been dealing with it. You know, it's really impeding my life lately. And just thinking about that environment just makes me break into hives, figuratively, because I can't imagine. And then you put workers in there as well. Holy shit, right? The workers are probably gonna be suffering from respiratory issues as well, but obviously the animals are. According to the American Veterinary Medical Association, the daily average indoor ammonia levels, dust, and particulate matter emissions were all higher in cage-free aviaries than in systems with cages, just by the factor that now they're allowed to move and they are in contact with the non-cage flooring, right? Studies show that birds can detect ammonia in the air and prefer to avoid it. When given a choice, they prefer fresh airs. No shit. Sometimes Sometimes this kills me. Sometimes you need to spell out the most benign, the most obvious thing, don't you? When given a choice, they prefer fresh air over air with between 25 ppm, a recommended upper boundary limit set for human safety rather than animal welfare, and 45 ppm ammonia, and perform significantly more foraging, preening, and resting behavior in fresh air. Right, so they're saying not only does it increase their disease risk, it also impedes their behavior. Sorry. I'm just like, had to read the message. And now I'm done. Particulate matter levels in cage-free housing can be up to 1,000 times higher than in ambient air. That's insane. High dust levels have been associated with more severe pulmonary lesions, typical and chronic bronchitis in cage-free birds. The most profound effect of ammonia, a colorless, highly irritant alkaline gas from decomposing manure and poultry dust, which, as I said, is mostly feather dust, from feathers and skin, dried manure, feed, and litter material. Look at me, as if I know some stuff. Where is Alpha Cars to put me down? Are respiratory irritation and conjunctivitis. I don't know if you know why I'm mentioning Alpha Cars, because it was like one day I was like boasting about, yeah, jump in. One day I was boasting about like understanding something, and Alpha Carlos was here. Oh well, and he said like, oh, well, it's just like basic shit. So like, why are you boasting about it? Chris, I'm in live one. Live one, do not enter, but you can enter if you want. And I'll share the screen, I suppose. There you go. Like that. Oh, I'm gonna have to layer it over. Can we see all right, guys? Can we see okay? Kinda. I do wish in Discord there was a possibility to like move stuff around and just like bring Chris up somewhere, not like a tiny thing. Eating a steak, Michael, that's funny. Let me... There you go. Maybe I can reduce it like that somehow. We'll see how we do it once Chris jumps in. We'll arrange it in a way that makes... Ah, what's up, Chris? I can't hear you. Discord has been funky lately. Oh, there you go. Can you hear me? Yeah. Nice. What's up? Yeah, how's it going? Nice stream. Yeah, not too bad. Yeah, this paper is interesting, that's for sure. Lots of citations that I wish there was time to go through. We're just gonna have to trust that they haven't like misinterpreted it or something. Yeah. I've definitely missed some bits of the conversation so far, but from everything I've heard, I don't think there's anything too contentious. Well, the only thing that I've heard that seems wrong is that PHP systems are going to increase profitability. Oh, wait, Chris. Hold on. They can't hear you for some reason. Let me switch to guests, I suppose, and let me One sec. Yeah, it's me. I'm the problem. Speakers. Why so? So yeah. Let me just see properties. Speakers. Can you speak up? One sec.
Test.
Yeah.
Hello.
Now it's working. It's fine. Now it's fine.
All good. Okay. Nice. Yeah, the only thing that seems a bit surprising to me so far, or unlikely, is the thing about cage-free systems increasing profitability. Yeah, that doesn't seem likely. Everything else seems kind of, well, everything else that I've heard, I'd be inclined to grant. And I just reiterate that obviously there can be lots of bad things still going on in cage-free systems, and that they are not. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're worse than cage systems, right?
Chris, before we continue, can you introduce yourself to my audience? I don't think some of them know you. Yeah. And
Yes,
for the love of
absolutely, yeah.
actual fucking God, do it right. Or I'm gonna kick your ass. Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
The thing that we were discussing in general today, please provide the entire way that you do activism, please.
All right. Okay. I think I've got you. Okay. Yeah. So basically, I am pretty much. So yes, my name is Chris Bryant, PhD. You can find my YouTube channel if you haven't seen me before. And I talk about lots of things in effective animal advocacy, of which cage-free is a decently large part. And yeah, so basically, I'm in favor of welfare standards. And the key thing to understand from my perspective, well, I do think that it's a better thing if animals are in better welfare conditions, period. But aside from that, I think that the key thing about welfare standards is that they increase the costs associated with animal farming. And therefore, they're likely to reduce the number of animals being farmed because it costs more to do it now. And the intuitive way that you can kind of think about that is if every chicken had to have a 5-star holiday and a massage before they were sent to the slaughterhouse, obviously it becomes economically unfeasible to farm chickens. So basically, putting as many restrictions as we can on the animal farms is going to drive up the costs of farming animals and make plant-based options more competitive.
Okay, yeah. So just to summarize, for people who are not used to listening to such a thing, what Chris is trying to do, he's trying, just to put it in our words, in non-welfarist words, Chris is trying to get to abolition through welfare, right? Is that generally correct?
Yeah, basically, yes. I think that the dichotomy between welfarist and abolitionist is a false one, because I think most welfarists are like long-term abolitionists. And I suspect most abolitionists are sympathetic to welfare improvements as well. But yeah, we can talk about that. There's one part of it which is like the suspicion that you might increase demand for animal products if you have sort of welfare assurances. People think, oh, it's not that bad, and therefore they're less likely to go vegan, for example, which I don't think is borne out by the data that I've seen. And then this paper that you're looking at is saying that in the case of cage-free systems, basically introduces some more kind of welfare problems, or some different welfare problems, I guess, which I think could well be the case, or almost certainly is the case, but it doesn't mean that they're worse on net.
Yeah, I guess those are. I do disagree with even the first claim that you made, that most welfarists are like abolitionists. In the end, I guess maybe the people that you associate with, generally speaking, but those people are like actually vegan. But for instance, if you look at the Humane Slaughter Society, which is a welfarist organization, well, there is nothing abolitionist about them. And the characters from that association are absolutely gross with the amount of food they eat from animal agriculture. So I think that's a bit generalized. I think that's like an experience from welfarist vegans, right? But maybe I'm wrong, right? I'm always able to admit that It's definitely, definitely could be wrong.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And I guess it's an empirical question we don't have the data on as to like whether welfarists are, or whether most welfarists are also abolitionists in the long term.
Mhm.
I suppose, yes, I'm just expressing that they're not mutually exclusive. You can definitely be a welfarist and also be an abolitionist,
Yeah.
in the sense of, yeah. Well, as I said, I do think it's a good thing if welfare standards are higher, like regardless of the increasing costs. But then the part that is often missed is increasing the costs and putting more and more restrictions on the industry. I posted a meme earlier in your Discord, which you understood immediately, which was appreciated, of the epic handshake between the anti-welfarists and the factory farms, both of whom agree on opposing stricter regulation of factory farms.
Yeah. I didn't necessarily
think about.
understand the meme. I was just like, I've listened to you and understood what you said at several things that you said on your channel, right? I understand what you're trying to do, and I've been listening to you, right? Been trying to understand your position. I gotta say I don't agree with it, but on the other hand, I also don't agree that the abolitionist efforts are going to bring the end of farming. I think it's going to be something else entirely. And, you know that I'm working on some of those things. And also, like, if I had more time, ability, money, a team, I would start closing slaughterhouses. And I think it wouldn't be through making people vegan or through reducing the suffering of animals in farms. It would be from something else entirely. But,
Yeah, you're talking about alternative proteins.
First of all, what I'm working about, I don't talk on my channel yet.
Okay.
But second of all, that's just like this one thing that I'm working on at this point. I have like so many ideas that, like, if somebody gave me like 10, 20 people and like a bunch of paychecks and like, just like, I would start closing slaughterhouses. I'm pretty sure of it. I have many ideas on how to. So my basic idea is on how to start reducing and in the end eliminating animal agriculture is through economic restraints, not through welfare. Or I know you think that welfare demands would provide economic restraints to some farms. Maybe
Yeah, I would say that's
haven't
part
been
of my thinking on it.
Haven't been happening so far though, Chris, have it?
Well, I think it has been. I don't think, the lack of having ended animal agriculture is evidence that it hasn't made any progress.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. You can't even say that about the abolitionist side either.
Of course, yeah. Whatever progress we're making is going to be incremental, like whatever the approach, I guess. But yeah, I think that you get people like vegan advocacy is obviously good. You're decreasing the demand for animal products, which is like moving down the demand curve. And then I know you have seen me talk about this before, but for the benefit of people who might not have,
Sure.
Putting more restrictions or requirements on animal farming is like moving up the supply curve. And so both of those things are going to tend to decrease the number of animals farmed. But what do you mean by economic restrictions? Are you talking about like taxes on animal products and that kind of thing?
I'm not going to disclose just in case.
Okay.
Like I actually
our enemies are listening.
I know there's at least one person from the industry who is listening. So I'm just gonna, some things I'm gonna keep to myself and gonna discuss with specific people in my Discord server while I'm working on those things, right? That's how it's gonna work. I'm not gonna give them the satisfaction of knowing that I'm coming. Especially since there is like literally no chance that I'm gonna be successful because there is no chance that I'm gonna get a team and then like a money to like to pay to this team. So it's
Well,
literally no chance.
Oh, I wouldn't rule it out. I'm actually going to share with you a Google sheet that I have of grants that you can apply to. And I made a video the other day talking about a bunch of more new money coming into the animal movement. So there's going to be grant makers who are looking for opportunities to fund, basically, which seems like kind of a weird framing from the fund recipients side. But yeah, if you've got a ton of money and you're trying to end animal farming, you're kind of like looking for opportunities to fund, basically. So if you're submit some grants and see what happens, basically. Yeah, that's what we do. We get rejected from a lot of them, but we get a few of them, and yeah, you can definitely make a difference that way.
All right, I'll consider it. Like right now, it's like I'm working on the thing for free, and we'll see how far we can get on that project. And if I'm like even marginally successful in that, I'm gonna think about creating a future for that, right? Because ideas are cheap. Sure. Execution is what's hard.
Yes, that's true. That's well said. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, there is like a lot of assumptions that you have to go through when you like create an idea. Oh, I'm gonna do this through this. You gotta assume a little bit, and then the assumptions might just like even backfire the way you said about that thing that we're not talking about right now.
Yeah, I got you. Very, very cryptic. That'll be good. That'll be good. Curiosity gaps, they call that in YouTube world.
Yeah. Somebody is hitting dislike on this stream right now as we speak. All right. That's how I know they're watching. So we went through quite a few. There is one thing that I'm making a claim that I haven't provided evidence for, that is this claim that the report states, oh, I guess they are providing it. They're saying, talking about the report here, that it says marketing offers an opportunity for an industry reset in how consumers and animal activist community perceives the industry, and they give evidence for that. But then they're saying cage-free welfare assurances mask the failure of this approach to meaningfully reduce overall hen suffering. Instead, cage-free functions as an industry tool to stabilize and expand markets and support overall industry growth. I think they should have added some kind of a reference here, but I think it's sound. Frankly, you probably don't, right?
I think that could be true in some ways, but the key question is going to be: does it increase or like what's the impact on the overall number of animals farmed and the overall like quantity of suffering for those farmed animals? Mm-hmm. So even with the profitability, like the industry could become more profitable, but that would be fine if it results in, or if it is, concurrent with fewer animals being farmed. I was reading a thing the other day about the US beef prices at an all-time high. Mm-hmm. And that is partly because the beef herds are at like a 50-year low. There's fewer cows being farmed for beef than there have been in the last 50 years. And well, maybe not paradoxically, but one of the effects of that is that beef farmers are at like quite high profitability currently. It's a good time to be a beef farmer because the supply is very restricted. Therefore, you don't have a lot of competition. Therefore, you can charge more for the beef, and therefore, right, it's like a profitable business to be in at the moment. Mm-hmm. So that business has become more profitable, which, like, from the animal advocate's perspective, you think, well, that's bad. Maybe, but it's more profitable because there's fewer animals being farmed. So, these things don't always like go. There can be some things happening which sound like bad things from our perspective, but they co-occur with things that are good. And that's why I'm always like, well, what's the effect on the number of animals and the quantity of suffering?
Yeah. I would say here's the thing, right? If I back into my carnist self, right? So I grew up on a mini farm, like with animals. like hobby farm thing with some animals there, like 12 hens. That's what we had. Some quail and at some point a goat. That's the extent. And then it was still a hobby farm because we had like an orchard, 3 vines and stuff like that, right? I think the fact that cage-free has this air of high welfare around it, even if people don't buy cage-free, the existence of cage-free gives them permission to buy eggs from conventional, which is how I operated until I became vegan. I knew cage-free exists. I knew I can't afford cage-free, but that made the fact that cage-free exists made it okay to buy the regular, the conventional, the caged eggs. So that's the point I think they are making here. And it sounds true to me, but I would have loved to see some kind of a survey here, something like that. I don't think it could be, I don't even know if a survey could occur, because I don't know how truthful carnists could be about this, right? This requires reflection or a very skillful survey that allows to see the inner working here, to see if that actually occurs. It probably exists somewhere, doesn't it? Survey like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that definitely could occur in some cases. Yeah, I can see what you're saying. That could occur in some cases. I think that overall, I'm trying to find. Oh yeah. So yeah, overall, it seems that when there is media coverage, which is like, I guess would be the key lever here that you'd kind of do an experiment around, on, for example, cage-free systems, it does seem to reduce rather than increase demand for eggs. And I think that's mainly because most people don't really know about, or like just don't think about the terrible conditions to start with. So when you're like, hey, there are now some eggs where they don't lock up the hens in cages for all their lives, people are like, wait, what? is that what we're doing?
Yeah.
So I think there's like, and it's easy from the vegan perspective to kind of underestimate how naive the average person is. If you spend all of your time thinking about this, it's kind of difficult to occupy the mind of someone who spends almost no time thinking about this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, from what I've seen, when there is media coverage generally about Prop 2, for example, which banned cages for egg-laying hens. Well, this says, okay, so there's one experiment that says decreased demand for caged eggs and increased demand for cage-free eggs, which is not like what you would ideally want. Well, I guess it's better than the alternative, most likely. And then there's others as well that find when there's coverage about like corporate or policy welfare improvements overall, that people decrease rather than increase their consumption of those particular animal products.
Really? I would love to read that. I would love to read that.
Yeah. I'll send you this link in Discord.
Cool. Okay, but let's continue. I didn't think about that. One sec. I'm trying to see where I can put you so that people can see your face right there. But it's
nice.
Just gonna be like that. Sorry. So we're now at analysis. Part 1, the effect of toxicity and pathogenic disease on the bodies and behaviors of hens. So pecking, foraging, and dust bathing in pathogenic dust and wet litter. So this is where they're making the claim that welfare actually decreases in cage-free thingies. Try again. Are you trying to get your camera to work? Because
yeah, I mean, it might not work. So I'm my
Discord
server
is just like It's been issues. There's been issues. I think Discord really reduced the quality of servers that don't have enough boosts or something. Yeah,
Oh,
it
really? Okay.
doesn't do.
All right, no worries. Well, if we don't have cam, we don't have cam. That's fine.
Yeah, sorry about that. So
Oops.
try, by the way, also like disconnecting, reconnecting your camera. That works sometimes.
Yeah, I think I don't think it's going to work. I'll just chill.
Okay. So cage-free housing systems are primarily indoor systems with limited or no outdoor access. Certified cage-free guidelines from the UEP address only indoor housing components. The large amount of feed, litter, and excrement combined with dust paving and foraging behavior and increased bird movement in alternative systems leads to higher concentrations of bacteria and fungi in the air and increased levels of dust. According to the American Veterinary Medical Association, the daily average indoor ammonia levels, dust and particulate matter emissions were all higher in cage-free aviaries than in systems with cages. Studies show that the birds can detect ammonia in the air and prefer to avoid it. It's where I said no shit. When given a choice, they prefer fresh air over air with between 25 ppm, a recommended upper boundary limit set by human safety rather than animal welfare. Must be shitty to work in those places, Jesus Christ. And 45 ppm ammonia, and perform significantly more foraging, preening, and resting behavior in fresh air. So, as I said before, but you're here now, and I'm going to repeat it. They are providing a citation here that animal behavior is better in fresh air than in aviaries. But they still do exhibit some behavior because they try to dust bathe in those aviaries, and therefore they bring up the dust, the shit, the feather dust and ammonia and all of that up in the air, and then obviously they breathe it more than in cages, because in cages they don't literally, there is just like a cage frame, so all the shit falls through, or most of the shit at least, all the dust falls through off of them into the lower areas, and because they don't dust bathe in that stuff, the air quality is better in caged aviaries than in non-caged. So particulate matter levels in cage-free housing can be up to 1,000 times higher than in ambient air. I don't know if, like, I would prefer to know what does that mean. At what point does it become toxic, rather than just giving us a number right there, right? Because that number means nothing to us. It's a bit fear-mongering if it doesn't have a reference point.
Yeah. I think the key thing, and I'm happy to grant that it's like worse air. I mean, it makes sense that if they're like trying to dust bathe and then it's just a bunch of shit on the floor, so they create pretty bad air quality from that. Happy to like grant that that's the case. There definitely could be some ways in which the welfare is lower in the cage-free systems. Now, of course, the relevant thing is going to be like overall welfare, and if air
What do you
quality is
mean by
going to be a part
that?
of that.
If the welfare is reduced for the individuals, what do you mean by all the overall welfare?
Well, I mean, air quality is just like one aspect of their welfare, right? So they might have worse air quality, but that's offset by being able to move and stretch their wings, which they enjoy doing, or something like that, right?
Yeah.
There's going to be all sorts of kind of trade-offs between the two different systems.
Well, that's the claim they made earlier. They said, so cages are a certain types of poor welfare, but then cage-free just like replaces some welfare issues with cages and exacerbates them in, or like creates new issues in cage-free, which are worse. They are making the claim that it's worse.
Well, are they making the claim that it's worse? I mean, again, there could be some ways in which welfare is worse, like air quality, for example. but you have to like weigh that off against other things. I would want to see some sort of attempt to be like, okay, air quality's worse. Air quality gets a 1 out of 10 in the cage-free systems and like a 4 out of 10 in the cage systems, and then that's weighted for a certain amount that impacts on overall welfare. And then you have like a bunch of these, right? They peck each other more in the cage-free systems, and that's worse. But then they're allowed to move, and that's better. Costs more to, well, let's leave cost out of it. We'll just talk about strictly welfare. But like there are going to be other good things, or like instances in which welfare is better in the cage systems, or in the cage-free systems, sorry. And you'd need to do some sort of
calculation,
like comparison of the two overall, right? Yeah.
I think because
like,
because at the end of the executive summary, they are making the claim that the welfare is worse. I think they are going to have to make a calculation.
It doesn't look like they have.
You looking at the thing as well?
Yeah, I'm just like control Fing worse. And I've just had a brief scroll through, like they don't have anything like.
Well, listen, we're going to read the entire thing, and if they don't in the end quantify it somehow, which I fucking wouldn't even know how to quantify that shit. That's why I think utilitarianism is so unintuitive to me. How the fuck do you quantify when like something is better or worse when those are two different, like between two different aspects of a life, right? But if they're not like, if they're not making quantifying a comparison somehow, then I'll give you that this might be a kind of a useless paper. But I think at the least they're gonna make the claim that it might be like, the welfare is shifted, right? The welfare concerns are shifted from one thing to another. At the least they could make that claim.
Yeah, I think that's probably going to be the extent of it. But I mean,
We'll see.
You see this kind of thing, and again, we'll see if there is like a more systematic comparison. But you can see this kind of thing with some of the pro-meat stuff. Like you could write a paper which is like section after section about the ways in which including meat in your diet is going to be healthier. You're going to have higher iron, you're going to have more protein, all this stuff. And we would be looking at that and going, okay, those things are narrowly true, but overall your health's going to be worse. You're going to have increased rates of mortality, right? And so kind of like, it's a bit useless to be like, well they do get more iron. Do you know what I mean?
They do make the claim, though. They do say that it increases the risk of them being just like the exposure to avian flu, and therefore them being like prematurely yeeted in the farm, which is, I would say, is a harsher way to go if we're talking about the welfare of killing, I would say it is a harsher way to go by like being suffocated with ventilation being shut off. Yeah, that would be worse than being electrocuted and killed. Yeah.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, and that sounds like it's going to be another point in the cage systems a higher welfare column. But again, you'd want like the overall comparison, because I presumably they're not going to discuss the ways, or they've given some mention of the ways where cage-free systems do have, or I guess they've described the requirements of the cage-free systems.
Yeah.
But they're not going to elaborate on the ways that the cage-free systems have better welfare outcomes in the way that they're elaborating on the worse welfare outcomes, right?
I don't know. They might. I haven't read the paper. I'm reading it now, literally with you.
Mm-hmm.
So.
All right.
And by the way, we might conclude in a little bit. We'll go on for a little bit because you came up. But I am getting restless to get off the stream, frankly. So.
No worries. Yeah, I have to go in 15 minutes anyway, so no worries.
Yeah, that's cool. 15 minutes is exactly what I need to end this.
Perfect.
All right. So they're saying here this thing, and I do wish they said what the levels are, like the dangerous levels are. So maybe they will. I haven't read on. High dust levels have been associated with more severe pulmonary lesions, typical of chronic bronchitis, and in cage-free birds. So they're saying there is more more severe pulmonary lesions typical of bronchitis in cage-free birds. The most profound effect of ammonia, a colorless, highly irritant alkali gas from decomposing manure and poultry dust from feather and skin, dried manure, feed, and litter material, are respiratory irritation and conjunctivitis. This saturated dust in cage-free barns carries toxins and disease organisms. Inhalation also causes painful skin conditions as well as pulmonary congestion, swelling, hemorrhages, and blindness. And all of those are cited, Chris. So when ammonia interacts with the epithelial cell of the trachea, it causes lesions. The loss of trachea cilia, tiny hair-like structures that prevent pathogens from entering the respiratory system, reduces the effectiveness of the respiratory system's innate immune response. PM, which is what they were calling the particulate matter, is a regulated air pollutant under the Clean Air Act that also impacts the health of workers in egg factories, the thing that I was saying earlier. When ventilated into the surrounding air, fine particulate matter that forms in the air from ammonia emissions can affect public health. So here they are shifting away from animal welfare into human welfare, right? So birds have innate needs to peck, forage, and explore the environment. Modern strains of hens can spend around 40% of the day in foraging activities. It has been claimed that pecking substrate materials specifically provided for foraging and stimulation spread on the floor acts as enrichment that fulfills these needs, preventing frustration and encouraging natural behaviors. So you were wrong. They are saying the good stuff, right? Yet the same loose litter scattered on the floor of barns that is said to allow hens to scratch, dust bathe, and forage plays a role in ammonia control by absorbing feces and moisture. So the saying the good stuff becomes the bad stuff long term.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're mentioning some of the. It's been claimed that like they're going to bring it up so as to refute it. They're not going to have, like, this is section A of, I guess it's section ABC for and D for like different arguments against cage-free systems, essentially.
They are telling the good thing here, right? They're just like not emphasizing. If that's what you wanted for them to emphasize it, they're not emphasizing because it becomes a bad thing. They are saying the fact that they are cage-free, they are act more like appropriate to how birds act in comparison to when in a cage. Is just the thing that also is usually used as enrichment in those farms, is the thing that becomes deadly to them.
Well, yeah, I mean, kind of. So my main gripe is going to be that I'm probably going to grant all of this. Like there could be ways that specific welfare outcomes are worse in cage-free systems than in cage systems. Mm-hmm. I very much doubt that overall welfare is worse in cage-free systems compared to cage systems. And you can elaborate on like the air quality and the ways in which it is worse, but if there's not going to be like a comparison of the two where they kind of weight things and do it like a proper comparison, basically, I don't think.
I don't know how you could, like, if you have the thing, right? If you can move around a little bit more, but also this moving around causes your earlier demise and like this respiratory disease. Someone who is struggling to breathe lately, I can tell you that's like pretty bad. Yeah, like how do you compare those if you are more likely to die and while you live, you struggle to breathe?
Yeah, well, the way they do this kind of thing in humans in like health economics they have quality adjusted life years, which are derived from surveys about like how much people would not want to have different diseases. Basically, it's like how much would you pay to not have cancer versus how much would you pay to not have a broken leg. Okay, people would pay a lot more to not have cancer than they would to have a broken leg. So having cancer is worse than having a broken leg, right?
Yeah.
So you can compare these kind of things, at least in the human case, and it makes sense that, like, obviously
Yeah, we can
some
extrapolate, I
things
think.
subjectively are worse than others, right?
Yeah, we
It just
can
looks like
extrapolate. And therefore, I'm not sure how, like, I think if you ask humans, would you rather die earlier while struggling to breathe, or die later while not struggling to breathe, or while struggling to breathe a little less struggle, right? I think the earlier demise while struggling more to breathe would be like reduced welfare. I don't know. I'm just like, maybe I'm just, think of myself too much. But I don't know. This seems like a slam dunk to me. And I don't think you can, since you haven't read the paper as I didn't, I don't think you can make the claim that they're not gonna do some kind of a utilitarian calculator at the end of this. I know PETA is generally an abolitionist organization, but they have done calculations in the past, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, so, yeah, and if they do, I'll eat my words. I mean, I'm looking at a thing from welfarefootprint.org where they have tried to do some sort of quantification of the two. It says main findings: cage-free aviaries were found to be clearly superior to conventional cages and furnished cages, even soon after a transition to cage-free environments. Overall average of at least 275 hours of disabling pain, 2,313 hours of hurtful pain, and 4,645 hours of annoying pain are prevented for each hen kept in an aviary instead of CC, it says, I guess that's conventional cages, during her laying life. And 1,410 hours of hurtful pain, 4,065 hours of annoying pain prevented for each hen kept in an aviary instead of a furnished cage, that must be, during her life. So they've put some sort of, do you know what I mean? They're like doing some sort of comparison between the two. And you could think about, like, as I said, there could be some meat industry paper saying section A protein, section B iron, and go through like all of the ways in which a diet including meat is going to be healthier than a vegan diet, for example. And we'd be going, yeah, but hang on though, the overall, you've got to think about the overall, right? And it's just like a very, like, if you want to write a paper elaborating on the ways in which meat is healthier and just like having 2 pages on protein and then the next 2 pages on iron and so on, you could do that, but the problem with doing that would be obvious.
I understand what you're saying, I think.
Yeah.
You're saying looking at the individual issues will not give you the whole picture. We shouldn't ignore the whole picture, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But what I'm saying is, right, like, if the meat industry could prove that, for instance, meat and could prove well, right, because they definitely tried doing this in the past, if they could prove that meat actually reduces your respiratory disease suffering and premature death, right? So meat causes you to live longer with less respiratory issues. I think even if they, like, at that point, as vegans, if we would say, well, but wait, like, tofu gives you more of this one amino acid, that would be like, or like you saying, let's do comparison between a plant-based diet and a meat-based diet. But surely the meat-based diet in that case would totally win if it gives you less respiratory issues, which are incredibly disruptive in life. As I told you, I am suffering from some now, so I can attest. And then you also die earlier on a plant-based diet. Whatever you can say about like increased well-being of a tofu diet would just like dissipate, in my opinion, because those are like really big issues. You are more likely to be killed earlier, and you suffer more
Yeah,
through respiratory diseases while doing
for
it, right?
sure. For sure, I would think overall mortality is like a pretty solid indicator in the case of in the case of like evaluating the healthiness of different diets. We should say for the like, I'm sure everybody watching knows this, but the overall mortality is actually lower on a plant-based diet compared to a meat diet, right? But we're just
No, higher.
hypothesizing here.
It's
Yeah,
higher. You said lower, but it's higher.
on a plant-based diet.
Yeah, you said lower, but you meant higher. That's okay. I know, everybody understood.
Wait, sorry.
That's okay.
Your life expectancy is longer if you have a plant-based diet, we're saying.
Yeah.
In fact, yeah. Yes, but then, so then maybe, but to continue the analogy, like what if you're in excruciating pain for much more of your life on the meat-based diet? Now you don't have the respiratory issues and you live a little bit longer, but you're going to be in excruciating pain for the duration.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe not then, right? It's going to be trade-offs, and that's why you've got to have some sort of way of doing an overall comparison.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I hope they do. I'm with you on that. I hope if they're going into this endeavor, they almost must, in my opinion, do some kind of a true comparison between what caged hen experiences and what cage-free hen experiences. Is just like, this is not the first thing that I'm reading about just how cage-free is like not this welfare heaven, that it does increase certain issues, and it has similar issues that caged hens have, like for instance the like the mites that attach to the legs, that I don't remember the name of those mites. They still experience that in cage-free environments, for instance, right? But they are walking more on the ground rather than on wires, for instance. But I would say, like I don't know. I'm with you. I do hope they do make a comparison, because maybe they're not necessarily do it in like a table, which would be a shame. I would expect a table there of comparison. This what happens in a cage environment. This what happens in a cage-free environment, and just some kind of a point system. I agree, if they're going into this endeavor of proving that welfare is worse, they must.
Yeah, and I've just like I've got Claude in the other tab. I'm like searching for some studies that do this. So there's one on the welfarefootprint.org. I will say there's one on in a Cambridge.org animal welfare journal that actually says there is very little difference between the two. So I mean, I would find something like this to be compelling because they've done some sort of quantitative comparison. It says these birds, which what was I refer? Okay, non-cage birds found to be more active, made greater use of resources. They also had stronger bones and were less fearful than birds in furnished cages. On the other hand, it says birds in furnished cages had lower overall mortality rates, which is what you're saying, lower incidence of bone fractures, and lower airborne dust concentrations, which is the other thing you're saying. And then it says when all the welfare indicators were integrated into a single overall welfare score, there was no significant difference between the systems.
Yeah.
So that's
and
I would find that kind of compelling. Where there's like an overall quantitative comparison between the two. Now, I will say that the other two sources that I found on this do say that the cage-free welfare is better. And then the other point that I just want to make quickly, because I know we're running out of time, the cost is going to be higher. And I think that's, again, like a really key thing that's overlooked. I usually think about the stocking density, like if they have lower stocking density, i.e. you can fit fewer animals per square foot or whatever, you need more land to produce the same amount of animal product, and therefore it's going to be more expensive. So that's usually what I'm thinking about in these kind of systems. But actually, this report brought up something else, which is feed as well. If they can, because most of the cost of rearing animals is their feed.
Yeah.
So if you can have cage-free systems, they move around, they need to consume more calories.
True.
The farm has to spend more on animal feed, and therefore, right, it's going to make it more expensive. And the point of that is you've got plant-based eggs, for example, which are like much more expensive than than animal eggs, I guess, at the moment. But that gap is going to narrow, and the more like restrictions that we can add on to conventional egg production in terms of welfare requirements, or even like human health and safety or environmental requirements, we basically want to burden them with a ton of regulations that eventually makes it unfeasible to be able to do. And that's what they're doing to alternative proteins as well. So the other side knows that that's the playbook. So yeah.
Yeah, I look, I agree with you that it is plausible that welfare restrictions can increase the burden of cost on farmers, and therefore the burden of cost on consumers, and therefore farms could start closing because of that burden, or consumers would start buying less. I understand that that could happen. Yeah, I'm just unconvinced that the actual welfare commitments can get us there.
Well, we'll see, I guess. I mean, they're
Absolutely.
fighting back on a lot of these things, which I think is always a good sign that
Yeah, I
the
agree with
industry
you
doesn't
there.
want it to happen, right?
Just the fact
So,
that they
yeah.
walked back the McDonald's and the whoever the fuck, I don't remember, you were talking about it. Just the fact that they walked back their commitment. Bro, we should have done more in we should have put that on every bus station. Just the fact that they walked back on their welfare commitments.
100%.
I'm with you there. We should have done more hoorah about it. But they did. And therefore, the average consumer is gonna continue buying those products for as cheap as they are now. So
Yeah, I mean, these things are always only as good as their enforcement and follow through.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the UK, we've got up to like 70-something% cage free, and now they're going to ban it at a legislative level, and like they're going to make laws against it, and that becomes feasible to do because it's only a minority of the industry who are now going to try and oppose it. And actually, most of the industry is like, okay, good, they won't be able to undercut us anymore. Like, we're already doing cage free and it's costing more to do. So, like, we want everyone else to have that same burden as well. In the US, I think it's got to like 30-something% cage free. But I don't know. One thing that I would do if I was an evil mustache twirling animal industry executive is try to get lots of the pro animal people saying cage free is a waste of time, and like cut out the legs from under it so as to reduce the pressure to go that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I think it's always informative to look at like what the other side is supporting, and if the other side's opposed to cage-free laws and stuff like that, that means we probably should be doing them. Not in all cases, right? Because there could be things, like I said, that increase their profitability, but are nevertheless good for animals. But yeah, something to think about anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually definitely something to think about. If we, to be fair though, wouldn't it like backfire and just make them go, nah, I'm just gonna buy the low welfare food then? And then it would at least bite you in the ass, right? Or like it would bite all of us in the ass, but because I don't think that it's better for animals to be in low welfare rather than high welfare. While we are abolishing the industries, surely we should take care of them as well. Like
100%.
increase their like, I don't know, whatever. It just like seems to never work. That's the point, Chris. It seems to never work. Seems to never like actually increase welfare, as this paper is making the claim as well. And you know, just like whatever increased cost there is, it increases the cost of this one sector of eggs, which some people clutch their like, massage their heart, think how good they are for buying the cage-free eggs. But then there is the idiots like me, like I used to be, saying, oh, high welfare eggs exist, therefore I'm going to buy the conventional shit until I can afford the high welfare.
Yeah, for sure. No, I definitely hear what you're saying on that. And like, hopefully, yeah, I think the overall effect is, yeah, it seems to me at the moment that the evidence is, or like on balance. And again, I really haven't looked at this in that much detail. I've got 2 papers saying it's better, 1 paper saying there's no difference. Seems to me like on balance is probably is better for the animals in cage free. But then like I think the main thing basically is increasing the cost. And it is worth saying as well, that's not something that a lot of animal advocates are necessarily going to be that loud about saying, because you can't, like, that's not something you can go to a policymaker and say, hey, this is going to increase the cost of food. Well, okay, no, we're not going to do that then, right?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, that's going to be more important than welfare considerations. But so they have to frame it as like this can be better for the animal welfare and kind of keep quiet about the cost part. But
yeah, Chris,
so yeah, hopefully not too many of our ops are listening.
Last point, man. So
Yeah.
Big Worm BF said, God, I love meat. And then you continued talking, and he said, that guy makes a good point. So the carnist is on your side. Therefore, I would consider your position to be wrong.
Wrecked. All right.
Wrecked. All right. Guys, I'm going to sign off. Chris, thank you very much for coming. We're going to continue to read this paper next week. We're going to be here for a while. So, yeah, everybody, see you next time.
All right. Nice one. Thanks, Vivian.